The fluorescent lights of the gas station flickered, casting a sterile glow over the cracked linoleum floor. It was nearly midnight, and the place was quiet except for the hum of the cooler and the faint buzz of a neon sign outside. Amara stood by the counter, her thin jacket doing little to shield her from the late autumn chill that seeped through the glass doors. In her arms, her 6-month-old daughter, Lila, fussed softly, her tiny hands clutching at Amara's worn sweater. The clerk, a bored teenager with earbuds dangling from one ear, barely glanced up as Amara placed a small carton of milk on the counter. $2, he muttered, eyes fixed on his phone. Amara's fingers trembled as she dug through her pockets, pulling out a crumpled dollar bill and a handful of coins. She counted them carefully, her heart sinking as she realized she was a quarter short. Lila whimpered, her cries growing sharper, and Amara's chest tightened. She'd walked 3 miles in the cold to get here, the only place open this late, because Lila hadn't eaten in hours. The formula was gone, and this milk was her last hope to warm something for her baby. I'm sorry, Amara said, her voice barely above a whisper. I thought I had enough. Can you maybe let it slide? Just this once. The clerk sighed, rolling his eyes. Lady, I can't. Rules are rules. Amara's face burned with shame as she glanced at Lila, whose cries were now piercing. She was about to turn away when a deep voice cut through the silence behind her. I've got it. Amara froze, startled, and turned to see a man in a tailored overcoat standing a few feet away, near the coffee machine. He was tall, with sharp features softened by tired eyes, and he held a steaming cup in one hand. His presence seemed out of place in the grimy gas station, like he'd stepped out of a different world. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a crisp $5 bill, and handed it to the clerk. Keep the change, he said, his tone calm but firm. The clerk shrugged, rang up the sale, and handed Amara the milk. She clutched it tightly, her throat thick with gratitude and embarrassment. Thank you, she whispered, avoiding the man's gaze. I'll pay you back somehow. No need, he said, his voice gentler now. He stepped closer, and Amara noticed the faint lines of exhaustion etched into his face. You're warming that for her, right? He nodded toward Lila, who was still fussing in Amara's arms. Amara nodded, her cheeks flushing. Yeah, she's hungry. I just need to heat it a little. The man gestured toward the microwave near the coffee station. Go ahead. I'll wait. Amara hesitated, unsure why this stranger was being so kind. But Lila's cries urged her forward. She crossed the small store, cradling her daughter, and carefully poured a small amount of milk into a paper cup she'd grabbed from the counter. As the microwave hummed, she rocked Lila gently, whispering soothing words. The man watched from a distance, his expression unreadable. When the milk was warm, Amara tested it on her wrist, just like her mother had taught her years ago. It was perfect. She sat on a stool by the counter, feeding Lila with a makeshift bottle she'd fashioned from a clean plastic bag and a nipple from home. The baby quieted, her tiny hands relaxing as she drank. The man approached slowly, pulling up a stool nearby. She's beautiful, he said, his voice soft. What's her name? Lila, Amara replied, her guard still up. She wasn't used to kindness from strangers, especially not men in expensive coats who looked like they belonged in boardrooms, not gas stations. I'm Daniel, he said, offering a small smile. Mind if I sit here for a bit? Long night. Amara shrugged, too tired to argue. Sure. They sat in silence for a moment, the only sounds Lila's soft gulps and the distant hum of the gas station. Amara stole a glance at Daniel, noticing the way his shoulders slumped slightly, as if carrying a weight she couldn't see. His watch gleamed under the lights, and his shoes were polished, but there was something raw in his eyes, something that didn't match the polished exterior. You come here often? He asked, breaking the silence. Amara let out a dry laugh. Only when I'm desperate. He nodded, as if he understood more than she'd said. I get that. This place, it's kind of a last resort, isn't it? She looked at him, surprised by the lack of judgment in his tone. Yeah, it is. Another pause. Then Daniel leaned forward slightly, his voice low. I saw you earlier, outside the shelter on 5th Street. You were with her, carrying that same bag. Amara's heart skipped a beat. She hadn't noticed anyone watching her. The shelter had turned her away earlier that evening too full, they'd said. She'd been trying to hide her situation, moving from place to place, avoiding pity or worse. You were there, she asked, her voice tight. Daniel nodded. I was dropping off some donations. I saw you walk away, and I don't know. Something about you stuck with me. Then I saw you here, and he trailed off, rubbing the back of his neck. Why didn't you tell anyone you needed help? Amara's grip on Lila tightened. I don't like asking, she said, her voice barely audible. People judge. They see me, they see her, and they think I'm a failure. Daniel's eyes softened. You're not a failure. You're doing everything you can for her. Amara's throat tightened, and she looked down at Lila to avoid his gaze. You don't know me. I don't have to, he said. I can see it. The way you're holding her, the way you walked miles in the cold to get that milk. That's not failure. That's strength. The words hit her harder than she expected, and she blinked back tears. She wasn't used to kindness, not like this. Not from someone who didn't want something in return. Why do you care? She asked, her voice sharper than she intended. Daniel leaned back, staring into his coffee cup. Because I've been where you are. Not exactly, but close enough. Amara frowned, skeptical. You? In that coat? With that watch? He chuckled, but it was a sad sound. Yeah, I know. Hard to believe. But 20 years ago, I was sleeping in my car, scraping by, wondering if I'd ever make it. Someone gave me a chance back then. A stranger, just like I'm a stranger to you. Changed my life. Amara studied him, trying to see past the polished exterior. There was sincerity in his voice, a quiet pain that felt real. So what? You're some kind of millionaire now, paying it forward? He smiled faintly. Something like that. I run a company downtown. Tech stuff. But I'm still that guy who knows what it's like to feel invisible. Amara didn't know what to say. Part of her wanted to push him away, to keep her walls up. But another part, the part that was exhausted and scared and so tired of being alone, wanted to believe him. Before she could respond, the gas station door chimed, and a young woman in a bright red coat burst in, her phone pressed to her ear. Daniel, where are you? The board's freaking out. You can't just disappear like this. Daniel sighed, standing. That's my assistant. Duty calls. He pulled a card from his pocket and slid it across the counter toward Amara. This is my office number. Call me tomorrow. I know people who can help, with a place to stay, with Lila, with whatever you need. No strings. Amara stared at the card, her fingers hovering over it. Why are you doing this? He hesitated, then met her eyes. Because someone did it for me. And because I believe in you, even if you don't yet. The assistant was pacing now, gesturing wildly. Daniel gave Amara one last nod before heading toward the door. Call me, he said over his shoulder. I mean it. Amara sat there, the card in her hand, Lila sleeping soundly in her arms. The weight of the night pressed down on her, but for the first time in months, she felt a flicker of hope. She didn't know if she'd call, didn't know if she could trust him. But as she looked down at her daughter, she realized she didn't have to decide tonight. For now, Lila was fed, warm, and safe. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The next morning, Amara sat on a park bench, Lila bundled in her lap, staring at the card. The shelter had let them in for the day, and she'd spent the last hour debating. What if it was a scam? What if he was just another person who'd let her down? But then she thought of his eyes, the way they'd held no pity, only understanding. She pulled out her old phone, the screen cracked but still working, and dialed the number. A week later, Amara stood in a small, clean apartment, the keys in her hand. It wasn't much, a one-bedroom with second-hand furniture, but it was hers, arranged through a program Daniel's company funded for single mothers in need. He'd been true to his word, no strings, just help. A job offer came next, a receptionist position at his company, with daycare for Lila. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a start. Months passed, and Amara found her footing. She worked hard, saved every penny, and watched Lila grow stronger every day. Daniel checked in occasionally, always respectful, never overstepping. One day, as she left the office, she saw him in the lobby, talking to a group of employees. He caught her eye and smiled, the same quiet smile from the gas station. Thank you, she said, crossing the lobby to meet him. For seeing me that night. He shook his head. You saw yourself, Amara. I just gave you a nudge. She smiled, tears welling up, and for the first time in years, she felt like she wasn't invisible. Lila giggled in her stroller, and Amara knew, deep in her bones, that they were going to be okay. Not because of a stranger's kindness, but because she'd found the strength to accept it and to keep going.